Well, it's Thursday, April 21st, 2022. Good morning, I'm Andy Johnson. Well, this is the 52nd the year after April 21st, 1917. Those of us who were around who knew what that day meant. It was a high water day in the minds of some people, or low water day in the minds of others, regarding the demonstrations and the activism taking place in the country at the time, which was known as the Black Power movement. And some people are marking that. We talked with some of the leadership and representatives of the National Joint Action Committee early in the week about the fact that was the day on which somebody who was described as the first martyr of that period of activism was killed, Basil Davis, in Woodford Square. His was one of the largest funerals ever attended by anybody in Trinidad and Tobago, on record in Trinidad and Tobago over that time. We just marked that spot for you with the date today, April 21st, 2022. Welcome to the program. This is how we're going to start AM Prime this morning here on WESN. We're talking with Akini Gill. He's somebody who has overcome challenges to be a music education lecturer at the UTT. We're talking about his celebration of going back to school earlier this week. We're also talking with Michelle Borrell in the second hour. She's been on a couple of weeks ago with a book along with some of her other female colleagues in the business. She's talking with us this morning again about a book she's authored. We get to that, a collection of poetry. Of course, we take you around the region for one stop or two as the time permits. We share with you the COVID-19 figures and the Newsday poll and the responses to it. But right now, with us, Mr. David Abdullah, political leader of the Movement for Social Justice. His is one of the organizations continuing to protest the removal of the fuel subsidy, the increase in prices for that, as well as the ongoing increases in food prices and other aspects of the continuing increase in the cost of living. They're having a demonstration on Saturday. There were demonstrations. There were calls for people to stay home on Monday. It didn't work in the way that many people wanted, but the protests and the pushback continue on that and other matters. Mr. Abdullah is with us now. Good morning, David. Good to see you.
Good morning, Andy. Thanks for having me on your program. Morning to all of your viewers. And yesterday, April 21st, is the anniversary of the declaration of the state of emergency in 1970. Thanks for, bringing that historic event back to us this morning.
Yeah, sometimes, one feels that somehow we back there in a lot of ways. The sense of restiveness there is in the society, the opposition to a lot of things that are happening. People are claiming that, the country is not operating, is not being governed and led in the way it should be. And this is one example. So yours is one of the organizations which is saying no to the decision to remove the fuel subsidy and to halt the continuing rise in prices.
Yes, we are saying to the Minister of Finance, Mr. Imber, reverse it now. Yes, you announced the decision 2 Fridays ago, and the fuel price went up on 2 days ago, on Tuesday morning, and we are saying reverse it. And we are saying that because it's creating additional hardships on the average citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. And not only are food prices rising and will continue to rise throughout the year, given all of the information coming out of the world economy with the war in Ukraine and the prices of wheat and corn and therefore animal feed and flour and all those things going up, shortages of fertilizer, which means that ammonia prices have gone up, which means higher costs of producing food for farmers. All of these things are going to impact on the pockets and on what people can afford to put on the table. When then you add to that the removal of the fuel subsidy or partial removal of the fuel subsidy, and the price, therefore, of transportation will go up. The people who most depend on transportation in terms of using taxis and maxis and so on, ordinary people, working people. And if those operators of private vehicles, taxis and maxis, are forced to increase their fares, then the impact is going to be felt on by the poor and working people the most. We just had school opening on Tuesday, and many people were complaining. I'm sure you read the reports in the media of the difficulties of finding the money to buy school uniforms and sneakers and so on, because it was the first time that all students were going back to school physically in 2 years. So the not only is the removal of the subsidy, but the timing of it very, very bad, and it creates tremendous hardship on the average citizen of this country. The person who is working for minimum wage, persons working for $5,000-$6,000 a month. 40% of the people in this country, their incomes are $5,000-$6,000 a month and below. So the average person is under pressure, and that is why we are saying to the Minister of Finance, reverse it now.
All right, so I want to
and we have proposals to alternatives, which I'll come to in a while.
Yeah, all right. Because so the Monday was the day in which even taxi drivers themselves were prepared to forego any revenues they would have had there. Maxi drivers and others who had called for people not to come out, not to seek to come to work or anything like that. But a lot of people said, well, they weren't in a position to stay home, as bad as things are for them already. And some of the taxi drivers felt disappointed that people didn't come out to support what they were saying.
Yes, well, it's difficult to get everyone to stay at home unless you have a very carefully organized, systematic campaign, educating people and mobilizing people and getting buy-in. Making a call for people that stay at home is just like that wouldn't work. I think that their call too was for taxi drivers. This was a taxi drivers association, for taxi drivers not to work. Some didn't work, some did. And that shows, again, there's a certain lack of unity within those ranks. But each of the actions that people take signals or ought to signal to the government, whether it is a humongous action or not as large an action as people may expect, it signals to the government that there is dissatisfaction with the way in which they're running the country, that people are hurting, and the government does not seem to hear or understand how difficult people's lives are now, what is happening on the ground with ordinary citizens. They seem to live in a different place. They're up in space, maybe with Elon Musk and these guys, with Jeff Bezos with their space travel. The elites of the society are not understanding what is taking place with the lives of ordinary people on the ground.
But ordinary people not responding to these, some people would call it provocations, in the way that people like yourselves think we should.
Well, it's a process, and people are paying attention. People say to me, keep up the fight, Mr. Abdullah. We like what you're doing. Don't stop. So people are supporting. Whether everyone comes out at this point in time is another question. But people are supporting because they are hurting. And somebody has to stand up and take action in the defense of people, and that is what we are doing. But there is also, of course, the narrative which the government will put out and which others are propagating, that there's no alternative to what the government is doing, that the price of oil is now over $100 US a barrel, and because of that, the price of fuel will automatically go up, and the government can't afford the subsidy. So that's the government's narrative. And I want to address that, because, see, if that narrative is put out there, then people will say, well, maybe we have no choice but to pay the higher price because the government can't afford to do otherwise. And if that is what people believe, then they will drop their arms, will drop their hands and not stand up and engage in a struggle to get the government to reverse it. So let me just deal very quickly with some alternative proposals.
Go ahead.
And I challenge Mr. Imbir as the Minister of Finance. Let us debate it publicly. Come and debate me on this issue. Other economists have spoken one way or the other, either for or against the removal of the fuel subsidies.
Yeah.
So the government obviously has to put out more money. If the price of oil goes up, the price of gasoline goes up, and so on. The government will have to put out more money in subsidy for fuel. Two things arise. First of all, the closure of the refinery, Petrotrin, and the refinery at Pointe-à-Pierre has meant that we are now having to find US dollars to import gasoline, diesel, aviation fuel, and the like. Whereas if we had the refinery running, we would not have to find US dollars. And there's a shortage of US dollars in the economy. So that is a problem if that was caused by the government shutdown of the refinery. Secondly, for a number of years, the subsidy was actually being borne by Petrotrin, because Petrotrin used to supply NP with the fuel at international market prices. NP would then sell it to customers at the subsidized price, and the government was supposed to give to NP, who then give back to Petrotrin the amount of the subsidy. But for many years, the government never gave that subsidy to NP, so Petrotrin never got the subsidy. So if we had the refinery running, we could have managed the arrangement in such a way where the burden would not have fallen directly on the government to meet the full subsidy. Because with a state company, and although that would have put pressure on Petrotrin, there could have been some managing of the cash flows then of the government and of Petrotrin. So that's the first point I want to make. And of course, the foreign exchange issue. The other point I want to make is that the government seems not to recognize what is taking place in the country. That is that all of the large companies, the big conglomerates, Ansa Macal, Massey, the Massey Group, Angostura, which is a major company, the big banks, Republic Bank, Scotia Bank, and so on, big pharmaceutical companies and others like Agostini's, they have all been declaring larger and larger profits. So they made more profit, and with more revenue, they had more sales in 2021 than they had in 2020, even though we were in a pandemic in 2021. And they made more profit in 2021 than they made in 2020, and even perhaps in 2019. So even as the national economic pie is shrinking, because when it went down because of COVID, these big companies got a bigger slice of the pie. So there's more inequality in the society. And we say, listen, in a situation where there's a lot of pain and suffering being experienced by ordinary people who were out of a job for many months. Some people have never got back a job. Some people got a little bit of the salary relief grant for some part of the time they were out of work, but some never got it. Some, struggling to make ends meet. People can't survive from payday to payday. Food prices are going up. The CSO even had to say that the removal of VAT isn't dealing with the problem of rising food prices. So we are saying to the government, there is another way to raise revenue. So instead of dealing with the problem by removing the subsidy on fuel, increase taxation on the wealthy, on the big corporations in the country, and raise the money that way. What that will mean is that even, and those who are earning $70,000 a month, $100,000 a month, I'm sure that's not you, Andy, but there are people who are earning $70,000 and $100,000 a month, tax them more so that, yes, they will benefit from the cheaper fuel with the fuel being subsidized, but they will, on the other hand, pay by way of direct taxation. And that system of what we call progressive taxation, of higher taxes on the wealthy, is in fact the way in which you could best deal with the rising inequality. And that way you deal with sharing the burden of adjustment in a fair and equitable manner in the society. So that is what we propose. Property tax, for example, the Minister of Finance wants to start property tax on ordinary homeowners. We are saying start property tax on industrial companies, Point Lisas, all these big companies. Let them pay property tax first. The big commercial properties. You have one minister of government whose family, his wife's family, rents to the government for millions of dollars a year. They are not paying property tax. Let them pay property tax on those properties. In that way, let the rich pay more because they have more. Who have more corn should feed more fowl.
All right, so I'm glad you made the point, because as you were talking, that I was going back to that phrase, which used to be a catchphrase in the 70s coming forward, make the rich pay, but it's never been sort of implemented. It's never been embraced by successive governments here and elsewhere, because people see that as punishing people for being successful.
No, it's not a matter of punishing people for being successful, because their success depends on and has depended on the contributions made by everyone else in the society. So consumers buy from them, from them. They get contracts from the government. A lot of the big businesses in this country depend on big contracts from the government. I just mentioned one in terms of rental agreements.
Yes.
So, the big fertilizer plants in Point Lisas benefit from operating here in Trinidad and Tobago with relatively low electricity rates. Some of them had tax holidays for years and so on, and benefited that way. So we have contributed collectively to the well-being of those who are wealthy, and it is now the turn of those who are the wealthiest people in the country to contribute to the well-being of everybody else. Other than that, what will happen is that the society will just disintegrate, and nobody will benefit.
Right. It's not good enough to say, well, when they are successful, they create jobs, they create more jobs, or they maintain employment levels as they are.
No, that approach, is what came to be known in the Reagan-Thatcher days as trickle-down economics.
Yes.
What is known as what we call neoliberal policies. And all over the world, I mean, read the Nobel Economics Prize winner, Joseph Stiglitz,
Yes.
Who says that inequality is the greatest problem of the world economy. And what has happened, and even the wealthiest people in the world, Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, all these guys say that they pay too little tax. They don't pay enough tax. They themselves admit they don't pay enough tax. So they recognize that the contributions that they ought to be making is vital to ensure that the very workers that they need later on are well trained in terms of a proper education system, are healthy because you have a proper healthcare system, are able to get to work safely and in an affordable manner because you have a proper public transport system, that there's proper housing, that people have water and electricity and all those things which are necessary to have a productive workforce, which itself comes back to increasing economic activity, and therefore they will benefit as corporations. The government benefits by way of higher taxation, and workers and everyone else benefits by a better standard of living.
And what do you make of the fact of the Minister of Finance saying some years ago, well, we did this and they didn't riot, we did that and they didn't riot, we did this and they didn't riot. That gives a sense of, well, people are taking in stride these economic policy actions of the government, and there's nothing to worry about.
That's the height of arrogance. I mean, that reminds me of the French Revolution, when Marie Antoinette said, why are people protesting? And somebody said to her, well, they want bread. She said, well, if they want bread, give them cake.
No, she said she was misquoted, but no.
Of the elites. Sorry?
Yes. I said, I read where she said she was misquoted. She was taken out of context and so on, but that is it.
Well, the popular history that came down is what I just quoted, right?
Yes.
But we know what Mr. Imbert said, and you're right. You quoted him exactly correctly, and we are actually using that in our campaign, on our flyers and in our TikToks and so on, encouraging people to come out on our Facebook posts, because it is that arrogance of the elites that says we can do whatever we want to do, and can get away with it, and that is wrong. And we are saying to Mr. Imbert, reverse it. You cannot have that position, because what you're doing is pushing the country to the brink. People's lives are being pushed to the edge. And ultimately, that is not going to be good for the country as a whole.
And it doesn't make a difference that in many spheres of activity, people point to the fact that we are, to some extent, highly socialized, because there are a lot of goods and services that are subsidized, and a lot of action services, again, are provided free of charge. Public transportation, renewal of official documents, and CDAP, and so on and so on. Healthcare, to some extent, is subsidized. It doesn't match up. Well,
those are things that must be maintained.
Yeah.
And what the government is doing now with its neoliberal policies, they want to pursue increased rates for water and electricity, and we have to see how that rolls out. But again, those are you hear these statements that the price of water and electricity should be based on market rates. Now, what does that mean? That is a neoliberal policy where you want to remove all the subsidies, and we're saying no. So, take electricity for example. Those, again, the big industrial users who are making money out of their consumption of electricity, they're earning big amounts of foreign exchange and so on, they ought to be paying more. So how you structure your electricity rates and your water rates should be done in such a way that, again, those who are earning significant amounts of money from business activity, they ought to pay more relative to ordinary householders. So you, again, have a progressive system of rates for water and electricity. We'll have to wait and see if that is what is going to emerge. I rather suspect that the government is going down a market system. Once you have a market system, it is where the wealthiest and those who are best positioned, they survive and succeed. And those who are most vulnerable and weakest, they suffer.
All right, so let's talk.
And if I could just come to food prices, I don't know if I have a minute or two to deal with some alternatives with food prices.
Go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
So we are proposing that food prices should be addressed in several ways. One, the roadmap for recovery 2 years ago, nothing has seemed to have happened. I don't know if you have picked it up. I think you have even written on it. Nothing seems to be happening with that, particularly with agriculture.
Yes.
$500 million of investment was promised for agriculture. We haven't seen anything in terms of increased production of food. We need to have a massive effort for the production of as much food. We can't be 100% self-sufficient. A massive increase in production of food in Trinidad and Tobago, and taking part in a CARICOM effort so that we can buffer ourselves from what is happening on the world market, so that if we produce more yam, cassava, breadfruit, edibles, sweet potato, we can reduce how much wheat we import for flour, because all of these things can be turned in, all of our local root crops and so on can be turned into flour, which flour would be healthier for us, and we wouldn't be spending foreign exchange, and the price of it can be managed locally. We ought to be providing price support for farmers, so farmers could get a guaranteed price for their produce, and then consumers could get that produce at a lower cost, which cost is subsidized by the government, so that we get affordable food for people, and farmers would be incentivized to produce more and more, and they will get a price that enables them to have a decent standard of living. So those are just two of our proposals. There are others that could deal with rising food prices in the country.
Right. I mean, I had a discussion with the country representative for the FAO in Trinidad and Tobago one day last week, and from that discussion, he was talking about, he wrote this piece about the wonders of bananas, green fig, and its relatives, moko and plantain, and so on. So that the sense you get is that there are people who are prepared to come in and assist. The EU is talking about getting involved more in reviving the cocoa industry in the country. But somehow, these things, the uptake doesn't seem to match the sense of enthusiasm and encouragement that is there from some agencies. Why do you think that is?
Because those in control of the economy and those in control of the politics are not interested. There's no will, there's no political will, and it comes down to that. If there was political will to get it done, it would happen. Because a lot of the people who are involved, say, in the food import business and so on, they fund the political parties that are in government. So there's no incentive by the government to improve and increase agriculture and therefore enable us to be sustainable. And so there's an absence of political will. And the elites in the society, those who control economic and political power, they're not worried about food prices because they have enough money in their pocket to buy anything in the supermarket regardless of the price, and they don't care. They just don't care. And it comes down to that. Lloyd Best used to write about the validating elites, those who control economic and political power. And he used to say that our elites are failing the society. I want to say, like C.L.R. James, that our elites will never serve the society's interests. Those who control the politics, those who control the economics, they want to maintain the status quo. And that's what I said in my Easter message. They want to maintain the status quo. But the lesson of Good Friday into Easter is that we have to challenge that status quo. Right. And that is what the MSJ is doing, challenging the status quo. We have to change how power is used in the country. Is power going to be used in the interest of the majority of the people, working people, the poor? Or is power going to be used in the interest of the wealthy and the elites?
But both,
that is a fundamental question.
But the two big parties have massive amounts of public support, and so the message is not getting to them. But that's another kind of issue. But so Saturday, what will happen where?
Yeah, so we are gathering at the Queen's Park Savannah, opposite Memorial Park, in that paved area there at 11. And we will start the demonstration around 11:30 or shortly after 11:30, but we want to assemble at 11 o'clock. And we will walk along the top of Memorial Park and then down Charlotte Street, across Keith Street, down Frederick Street to Park Street, across Park Street to Charlotte Street, down Charlotte Street to Independence Square, then up Henry Street to Duke Street, across Duke Street to Frederick Street, down Frederick Street to Independence Square, and then up Abercrombie Street. And we end with a short rally in Woodford Square. We have written to the Commissioner of Police. I'm waiting for feedback from the Office of the Commissioner for permission. I sent that request in since Thursday of last week. And we have also written to the City Corporation for the use of Woodford Square for a short rally. So we're inviting everyone to come out. MSJ has organized this, but this is not just an MSJ activity. This is not about party. This is not about politics in that sense. This is about bread and butter. This is about your children. This is about putting food on the table. This is about your life. And so we're inviting everyone who is concerned about high and rising food prices, people who can't manage, who's, to find money to feed their family and so on, who's struggling now to find money to send their children to school. Come out and join us. A number of trade unions have agreed to have a representation in the demonstration, and we are in touch with other organizations inviting them to have representatives present. Right, and this will be the start. This will be the start. It's not going to be the end.
You think it's critical that you haven't got permission on paper yet? I mean, today's Thursday. The thing is Friday. You sent in the request a week ago. Is that?
Yeah. Well, there was a long weekend. Of course, there was a long weekend, and I suppose the commissioner of his officers were busy, trying to deal with all of the activities over the weekend, the long weekend. But this is not unusual. We often, even for Labor Day, when when I was in the trade union movement many years ago, and we used to write for permission to march on June 19th, which was a standard thing. Yeah. And we'd send in the request weeks before. We would sometimes get it the day before Labor Day. Yeah. So it's not unusual for us to get the approval the day before, which will be tomorrow. I'm sure we will get it. I don't see any reason why the commissioner should refuse permission.
All right.
And it's on a Saturday, so I don't see any difficulty with that.
All right, so you're looking forward to that. All right, well, thank you very much, David, for talking with us on this matter, putting that kind of, what you say, the progressive agenda for continued development in the country, rather than...
Thanks for having me, Andy.
All right, you're very welcome. Thank you very much. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll share with you the COVID-19 numbers, where they are as we speak this morning, and we take a look at the Newsday poll and the responses to the questions. Stay with us.
I bought my last pair in November of 2021 and I loved everything about these glasses. I heard about Ferrera Optical Virtual Care when I posted to social media about the dogs mangling my glasses. As someone who works from home, I thought, why not give it a try? And I did. Virtual Care is the opportunity for me to have a video consultation with either an optometrist or an optician for my eyewear or my eye care. I'm looking forward to most following my virtual care visit the opportunity to choose my glasses. To have someone to personally curate the spectacles that I want, that's very exciting to me.
Change your fate. Start to win at life with $20,000 every month. Win $20,000 every month for 20 years with NLCB's newest game, Win for Life. 6 numbers from 28 plus the cash ball could make you win for life. You deserve a win. Play Win for Life today. Visit NLCBGames.com for details. Players must be 18 years and over. Please play responsibly.
Today we're talking about cosmetic medicine, and we're on set at Relax Med Aesthetics.
We are like famous all over the world for this glow. You could in an airport, you could spot a Caribbean over there. Oh my God, she's from Trinidad.
She's definitely from Trinidad.
Yeah. So I felt like that was something that we needed to feel like we belonged, and we needed to feel empowered that our skin color was really important.
Step we've been waiting for is the chemical peel, right? So I'm gonna start applying.
What's up, Doc? Tuesdays and Thursdays here on WESN, Content Capital.
We have been apart for a long time. Now let's get together once again. Let's welcome you back. Family. North Coast Jazz 2022, May 27th to 29th. Born here, played here.
It may seem like the hardest thing to do right now, but we all need each other to wear a mask, wash our hands, watch our physical distance, and stay at home. We need you safe. Together we can make the difference. Together we can curb the spread of COVID-19. So let's be responsible in our actions. The Trinidad and Tobago Red Cross Society. Mission-based, people-focused, community-driven.
Welcome back to the program. In a moment, we'll be talking with Mr. Akini Gill. He's a music education instructor at the University of Trinidad and Tobago. He's someone who's overcome significant challenges to be where he is, and he was celebrating the fact that schools were reopened and children going back to school. We will talk with him about his sense of joy about that in a minute. But first, let's take a quick look at the numbers. COVID-19 in our midst on this morning, 21st of April 2022, 2 years after we began this battle with COVID-19. So those are the numbers, 32,802. That's the number of persons recorded as totally recovered patients. 6,310, the total active positive cases. The death toll thus far, 3,807. 142,919, that's the total positive cases recorded in the country since we began the checking on March 12, 2020 to yesterday. 405, the new positive cases in the 24 hours up to the end of the day yesterday, and 146, that's the number of persons in the parallel healthcare system. That's what they call the places designated for treating people with COVID-19. 146. That number has been slipping down for months now, and they say every time it goes down is a sign of greater hope for us as we get there. Yesterday there was one death. There was a couple of days ago when there were none, and that tells a story in and of itself. But the authorities are telling us it's not over yet. We're not over the hill yet, and so we have to keep the guard up so that we don't get back into surging forward from here to anywhere in the wrong direction. So those are the numbers this morning. We take a look now at the Newsday poll this morning. The question is, how do you rate the performance of the police service in its handling of the murder rate? And there's a headline on one of the newspapers this morning, which the Commissioner of Police is reported as being worried at the murder situation in the country. 16 murders in a couple of days thus far. So the question is that, how do you rate the performance of the police service in its handling of the murder rate? And one response is, it is horrible and it's useless. The Duncy 80s style policing is all they know now under this waste of time. They call him a P&M puppet. Another response is, only when you get rid of corrupted politicians would you see a competent police service. It trickles down to the street criminals. One other response, very poor. Intel is lacking. Too political. Critical thinking is a no-no. only mucho ego, too political. The police service, somebody's saying it's too political. Well, that's a view that's been expressed. Here's this other response though. Excellent work. 12 murders was a plus, as it could have been 23 if the police were not as vigilant and proactive. So sometimes you see one response is on one side of the street and the other is on the opposite side exactly. So, but those are the responses. Those are people's views on this thing. The other response, this question is so worded to place blame. Do the murderers call the police to tell them they are killing someone? The families are failing to raise decent, good-fearing citizens, children. Look in your homes and make the change you want to see. All right? So those are the responses to the question. How do you rate the performance of the police service in its handling of the murder rate? So let's go now to our discussion with Mr. Akini Gill, a music education instructor at the UTT. So he was celebrating a couple of days ago, saying that it was a joy, and for all different reasons, why schools have been reopened and children are going back to school. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning. I am good. How are you? Good morning.
Well, good, thanks. Well, let me ask you about your mother. How is she?
Pardon me?
I was asking about your mother. How is she? I'm asking about her welfare. And
she is good.
Yeah.
She is good.
Okay, so you give her my regards. So let's talk about yes. Let's talk about why you felt it necessary to celebrate the return to school, because there are some people who still on the other side of the street and saying that we shouldn't be returning to schools in the situation. There are some people who have concerns about going back to school in the circumstances that we face.
Well, I am celebrating it because before COVID, when you look at our education system, we had some major concerns in terms of a lot of our students are in the system and not being able to read, not being able to understand basic concepts. And we have organizations that usually help with that, like ALTA, the Dyslexic Association. However, we had to go online because of COVID, but I think that it pushed us back, and it pushed back especially those with learning disabilities who depend a lot on one-on-one individual attention in person to be able to learn. Yes, parents would have had to assist, but the parents are not the professional. The teachers are the professional people to really teach our students. And I think that our students miss that one-on-one in classroom. For example, the teacher explains something on the board and the teacher gives an exercise. A student who do not understand will be able to come to the teacher's desk. The teacher will be able to walk around the class, will be able to look in the book. The teacher will be able to write out or re-explain and write in the copybook. And some parents in our country do depend on the teacher explanation to be able to assist and help their students, help their children at home with their work. So I think 2 years was too much. And I think that we do not need no more of online. We need to stay out in the schools because it has been a lot, not only academics, but emotionally, mentally, children learn through play. For example, imagine those who want to begin preschool. Preschool is very important, playing with toys, laughing, playing games, singing. They would not have that experience for that past 2 years, and they're probably now in first year. I mean, at preschool, teachers teach them how to hold the pen, how to hold the pencil, how to make their letters. So now a first year or second year teacher have all that work to do, including to cover the syllabus at the infant level. What about those students who were planning to play for their school, for intercom? that was their dream, to play other sports. And that opportunity was taken away. How do they feel? How those things are affecting them emotionally? What about those students who left and did not see their standard 5 classmates? They did not have a graduation. Form 5, they did not have a graduation. All those things the COVID has affected. And us who have experienced school every year, could we think back and take out any 2 years? I cannot take out any 2 years.
To say that we could have done without, those 2 years. You said that 2 years was too long. You believe that the authorities should have found a way to get in-class schooling before?
No, I will not go down that route to say that. But I am now saying that 2 years was too much and it was enough. And we should allow the students to stay in the schools.
Yeah, and some people saying that for some children, these 2 years have been lost and they can't be recovered. And people are saying that will tell a story later on, because these are, for a lot of children, given their, in some cases, depending on what their ages are and what classes they were in, that is time that is not going to be able to be recovered. You take that view?
Yes, that will not be able to recover. And normally in our system, if a child is not ready to go, for example, in standard 4, usually we still place that child in standard 4. And that's outside of COVID. And now when we have a lot of students who have challenges, who picks up not as fast as others, and who have missed 2 years in the classroom. Yes, they were online. And for a long period of time during those 2 years, we had a lot of students who were trying to locate a device. And there are many times during those 2 years where teachers had to end the class for the rest of the day because the internet went down or because the Zoom was not working properly. And there are many times that you speak while teaching and the students may not hear you say a sentence or two. And when students have a class, when teachers have a class of 25, 30, 40 students on Zoom, and you have to stop to explain to 2 or 3 students, it's very difficult. Because you're on Zoom, you're trying to accommodate everybody at the same time, compared to in the classroom, where you could have given them something to do and deal with these 2 or 3 students.
Yes, so you're saying that it is a fact that maybe some students never got properly engaged because they spent too much time trying to source a laptop, and some maybe didn't at all over that 2 years.
Yes. They spend a lot of trying to source a laptop, maybe trying to get it fixed, maybe trying to get proper internet. So we need to evaluate and assess this situation. So I'm of the view that this term you should not teach any new content. You should just do revision and allow the children to play, to talk, and to enjoy themselves.
I think going back to the catching up thing, some people speak of it with fear as to what might be the disposition of those students. Can they, in fact, make up for this time? And what do you propose as to how teachers in the classrooms can make up for this time that was lost, if it can be recovered at all?
Time is something that you do not get back. So it's really almost impossible to get back 2 years. But what we can just do is do some revision and hope for the best. But we will see the effects of it in a few years to come. it will infect us. It have infected the education system in Trinidad and Tobago negatively. And it's going to take some time for us to recover. But we have to remember that we were already in a situation before COVID. So now it has pushed us back even further. And especially for students with disabilities.
Yes.
Especially for imagine students with hearing impaired, listening impaired, who was not aware of how to use the device. Those students who have this, who are dyslexic, who have trouble with writing, who have autism, who really needed the professional teacher to work with them in person. 2 years is a lot to come and have to make up for
to recover. You say we will see the effects in a while from now. What that might be? What might they be?
Most likely, in terms of for the SE, we may see more students getting below 30%. And for example, with the CXC, we may see more students getting less passes because they have missed out the foundation. For example, you have a child who's now physically going into Form 3, who did not have that experience physically of Form 1 and Form 2.
Yeah.
When you reach into Form 3, the discussion is about picking subjects. The discussion is no longer about what you would have learned in Form 1 and 2. So, for example, English, those topics that you would have gotten under your belt. So when you read Form 3, you will be able to build on to begin CXC work in Form 4. It will not be as how it should be while you were online for a lot of our students. Some of our students would be good because the online worked for them. They will be able to cope. But some of our students will be struggling.
All right, we got to leave it there, but let me just mention the title of your book, if it's still available for people. You should check it out. From Behind the Bridge to the Impossible Dream, right?
Yes, that's the title, and the books are available still at any RIK bookstore.
Yes.
And at UWI bookstore, and you can get your copies from me at 705-3380, 705-3380.
All right, Akini Gill, music education instructor at UTT. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you.
All right, keep good.
Same to you.
All right, let's swing into the first of our regional checks this morning. We go to Jamaica after the fatal shooting of Horine Glen. There's been 3 days of protests within the community known as Denham Town, where the residents are demanding the soldiers involved be brought to justice. Here's this report from TVJ.
For a third day, angry residents of Denham Town are protesting the fatal shooting of their neighbor by a soldier. Now, the demonstration, which started in the community early this morning, ended with the residents outside the Jamaica Defence Force Up Park camp demanding justice for his killing. Jamila Maitland was there.
Armed with placards that bore their pain, dozens of Denham Town residents dressed in white took to the streets for a third day to voice their anger over the fatal shooting of 32-year-old Horine Glen. The residents hurled abuse at members of the Jamaica Defence Force, who they say are responsible for his death. There was also larger than usual police and military presence, including a SWAT team, to calm the angry crowd and maintain order.
The burnt-out car behind me represents a state of unrest in sections of Denham Town following the murder of a resident on Saturday night. Now, soldiers are also heavily guarding the intersection to prevent residents from reblocking the streets.
Video of the incident showed an altercation between the resident and soldiers. The man was hauled away, but according to eyewitnesses, the soldiers followed him to his yard where he was shot. 5 explosions were heard on the footage provided to our news center. That footage was also given to the Independent Commission of Investigations, INDICOM, which is probing the killing.
Him have one son, and him go looking food and come back, he might not have it, but one thing him have a food for him. Them take away the little boy a father from him, and we need justice.
His partner showed us a bullet-riddled jeans that Rain had on his shoulder when he was shot. Her voice hoarse from the crying.
We the civilian them afraid of no fear, no, can't deal with it like animal.
Denham Town has been under a zone of special operations since October 2017. Officials have been pleased with the relative success of the ZOSA in the area, but there are fears that the shooting will further strain the already brittle relationship with the security forces.
There are soldiers who get along well, the police getting along well with the citizens. This situation is kind of different. It goes against everything that has happened over the past 3 years.
We glad for police and soldiers there, cause less things go on, but them not do the right thing with them for do. A bad man thing them a do, you know. One thing the man said to them, them a beat a look at you. When I beat my co-worker, so I want to show the video on the national TV. Now I not in a virgin. On the door, I not show the video where the soldier charge out of the car and the man going and me have a kill. You don't even know I'm kill my friend of you. You don't even know that. Be a foolish I go and boy, you know. Up a camp where I go on the done, you know.
We want change.
And so they did. The protesters gathered at the Jamaica Defence Force headquarters at Upper Camp to continue their protest under the watchful guard of the police and soldiers. The Jamaica Defence Force says an internal investigation has started in addition to the probe by INDICOM. There was no mention of the status of the officers involved. However, the residents ask that they be removed from the zone of special operation. Jamila Maitland, TVJ News.
Seven is out, all day is in. WESN News on the hour.
Every day, we communicate through stories. Stories of ourselves, our challenges, our goals, our experiences, and our aspirations. Storytelling is an art that we have mastered. WESN Film Studios comprises a collaborative team of experts with extensive industry experience locally, regionally, and internationally. The ability of your business to successfully communicate with your preferred audience depends on the strength of the stories you tell. Your vision should be communicated in a high-quality, professional, and creative way. From concept to post-production, advertising to film, multi-camera productions, live events, streaming, and virtual conferencing, we are WESN Film Studio. Let your own unique voice be heard and your vision realized. Call us today at 628-5835 for your next production.
In this season, we talk more about health, wellness, and everything in between. I am so excited to share with you everything about health and wellness so that you can design the life that you've always dreamed of. Join me here on What's Up Doc.
What's Up Doc? Tuesdays and Thursdays here on WESN, Content Capital.
What's the best way to grab the attention of viewers?
Please exercise more patience. You have to be kidding me.
Doing what we do best. I'll say at the very least it's a conspiracy of laziness against the people.
Join me, Keaton Shaw.
And me, Sean Michael Small, for Talking Point
weekdays from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
We go in depth on the trending issues and engage the most controversial newsmakers
as we get them to account to the people for their actions.
You can't go to the government with nothing. You can't go to cabinet with an empty hand, with a wish.
I'm glad that we're having this a sober, mature discussion.
In the present situation, I expect a continuation of the chaos.
Join us for the discussion, Mondays to Fridays,
only on WESN,
the content capital.
Let your voice be heard. Call Madam Fix-It on WESN, the only place that effectively helps you with your woes. Having problems getting onto government agencies, water woes, NIS and pension problems, potholes, and much, much more. Call me, Madam Fix-It, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right here on WESN. Let me fix it for you.
Burning questions, urgent topics. Welcome back to One-on-One, the show where we tackle the most current and pertinent subjects that are affecting all citizens, where we ask the hard questions and have in-depth conversations. What separates One-on-One from other talk shows is that the conversation stems from a younger perspective on topics that affect the fabric of our society. One-on-One, Wednesdays at 10 a.m. on WESN Content Capital.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Sight, Thursdays at 11:30 a.m., only on WESN, Content Capital.
It may seem like the hardest thing to do right now, but we all need each other to wear a mask, wash our hands, watch our physical distance, and stay at home. We need you safe. Together we can make the difference. Together we can curb the spread of COVID-19. So let's be responsible in our actions. The Trinidad and Tobago Red Cross Society. Mission-based, people-focused, community-driven.
All right, welcome back to the program. Well, our next guest is a lady who's very busy. She's an author, she's a radio personality, she does television just as this. She was here just weeks ago, I would say, with a group of her sisters, girl pals as they call them, with another publication involving Cecilia Salazar and others. Well, we're talking this morning about a new publication, a collection of poetry. Michelle Borel, 1077 Music for Life, right? That's it. Good morning.
You were referring to Virago with Auntie Penny, Penelope Spencer, and Nikki Crosby.
Yes. All right. So
thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Good morning.
Well, thank you very much. So let's talk about. So this is a book of poems. It's called Soulfully Yours, and the launch is coming up in 2 days' time at the Cafe Blue in the afternoon, 3 to 5 p.m. Let's talk about it. What is Soulfully Yours? That's what it looks like.
So Soulfully Yours, this is my second collection of poetry. My first collection, Soulspection, won Book of the Year People's Choice for the Bocas Lit Fest in 2018. And this is my sophomore collection of poetry. However, it is the 11th book that I have either co-authored or authored.
Wow.
So I'm very excited about this project because it's been some time. I finished writing this in 2016. So it's great to see that this dream is finally materializing. I think the pandemic, with the many challenges came many opportunities. We had that opportunity, as I used my first book, Soulspection, to do some soulspection, to go within and really find with us the beauty that is inside of us.
Yeah, and I'm interested, I'm intrigued that so you're allowed some time from the radio studio. So you leave, what's his name, by himself for now. To do this, that is interesting stuff. So give us a sense, a taste of what is inside those covers.
So I can share with you a piece.
Yes.
This piece is titled Fine Wine.
Fine Wine.
Aged 1983.
Okay.
Taking you back to 4100 BC in Armenia, they discovered the first winery. Whether white wine or red wine to become wine, fermentation is necessary. Older wine does not mean better wine. Some are to drink now, but only very few are for aging. For the hand-picked bottle that you wish to set aside, what is fundamental is the setting. No exposure for this lonesome bottle. The sun won't see it for a while. In the dark back of the stillness of the cellar shall it lay waiting in an aisle. Again, not any wine can mature into fine wine. There are components that are mandatory. The content of alcohol must be low, yet the sugar level high, and high too must be its acidity. Like me, are you two seeing a parallel? Keep yourself free from intoxication, then you shall age well. Stay sweet, but remember, not everyone can handle the sting of your vinegar. You may be forgotten for quite some time, but one day you will be the sip they all remember. Fine wine is rare, and so too must you be. Call to mind the fermentation of wine in the cellar. What great miracle at a feast when Jesus made wine from water. So regardless of what troubles lay at your feet, ponder on who is your vintner. Fine wine, aged 1983.
Age 1983. And you say you began by talking about Armenia.
Yes.
What was the connection?
Yes. Yes. In Armenia, that's 4100 BC when they would have discovered the first winery. So I am a lover of history as well. I'm a lover of culture. So you find a bit of that in different pieces that I have. And I just found the process of wine is something that we should think of, especially within this time. Any time that you feel as though the dream you have is taking a bit longer to materialize, it's because it's being aged to perfection. It's becoming sweeter. And that is something we must always call to mind.
Yeah. I tell you, my connection with Armenia, when I lived in Toronto, I was at a function one day and I was talking to this lady who I didn't know there was a country named that way because it was part of the Soviet Union. Now you just figured the Soviet Union, although it was made up of a lot of nations that were conquered and suppressed and so on. And she was passionate about being Armenian. I mean, that's in the 1970s, before the breakup of the Soviet Union. And, I began to understand, there are people, who have their nationalities, who hold on to, despite whatever is happening, despite the fact that they'd been run over and taken over, and become part of the Soviet Union. So I have a place in my mind for that country. So to discover that that's where wine was first made.
Yes, 4100 BC.
Yeah, wow. Oh, but you say, so the publication itself, you said it was completed in 2016. And what took it to this point for the launch? What happened in that intervening period?
Divine timing. Yeah. I think what happened as well with the pandemic, poetry, I feel as though it's very personal poetry. It's very emotional as well. And it would take time because it feels very much like you're giving birth to a baby and you want to protect your child for as long as possible. And with the pandemic, you realized, no, the time is now. We don't have time to wait. And I think combined with that, I found myself the absolute perfect team to be able to bring everything together. I got the right photographer, Scotty Todd of Epidemic Studios. I have been doing a lot of work with Arlene Villarreal, AV, the beauty expert, as well as Kadifa Ali, hair and makeup. And it has really been great having what we label ourselves as the dream team and having them together and having fantastic relationships as well with my kind sponsors who made this possible. Glorious Bodies, Glorious Minds, Day Spa, J&K, Signature Styles, Tranquility Credit Union, KFC, Oasis, Premium Purified Water, as well as Cafe Blue. everyone coming together made this possible. And Virego, as you know, that project is a project with the heart of charity in it. And I think, as I was sharing with a friend yesterday that aided me on the project, I shared with her, it's so amazing. We did a project to serve, yet it's when we're in service to others, we find that it serves us more. And doing that project, I think, opened plenty doors and allowed plenty things to be materialized because of that desire to serve. You wanted the project to be as best as possible. You wanted to pour your heart and soul into it, and so much came from that. The more you pour out, the more room you leave for more to be poured in. And I think that is what happened. One thing led to the other. Last year alone as well, I would have co-authored on 4 books, and I also published 3 children's books. So it was a busy year last year, and finally this year we started off with Soulfully Yours.
The profundity of this is not simple. The more you serve others, you are served yourself.
Yes. In having a heart-to-heart with my friend, when our hearts and minds combined, that's what came up. Because she said, you're thanking me, but I felt like I needed that project. It did something to my heart. And I said, me too. And that is what I shared with her. I shared with her that I realized the more you serve, the more you have service to others, you don't even realize it, that it serves you more in countless ways.
Yeah, and so this is the 11th publication that you've been associated with in some way or the other.
Yes. The first book that I would have contributed to, I would have been a teenager still at the time and still in school. It was an international collection of poetry with various poets from around the world. And the book is titled Of Laughter and Forgetting. That was in 2002. And the second piece that was published was in 2012. And it wasn't until 2016 that I published my first collection of poetry. And it was in 2018 that it won People's Choice Book of the Year. And I want to focus on that because I want to focus on the power of words. Very often we have a tendency to speak words, but whenever we use words with life, because we're consistently shaping our world with our words. And I remember when that competition came up, I felt very much like I chuckled inside, like it was very much for me, because it was just a week before I was speaking with my priests and I said, Father, I have been hiding this for so long, but use it as you will. I'm ready. Me as you see fit. And then I saw that email come from Nallis with this competition, and I said, okay. I entered. And when I went to the initial meeting, the first part of the competition that you had to submit everything by was my husband's birthday. The other part of the competition that you had to submit everything by was my first daughter's birthday. And then the final part of it was my first son's birthday. Yeah. And I went to the organizers. I said, I know this may sound strange, but I think I'm here, but I think I'm already the person that this is for. I said, it's just so serendipitous. And they looked at me as though I was a little bit crazy, and I understand why. But I chuckled inside. And I was very happy as well, because let not any obstacle deter you from anything. I was someone who at 6 or 7 was classified as having dyslexia. Yet at 8 years of age was when I won my first competition. And I think our Father has a sense of humor, because here is this person before you, reminding you that your dreams will materialize. And every time you open your mouth, speak life, shape your world with your words, and remember, thoughts become things. And thankfulness, gratitude, that is something that pushes you forward. Anytime you feel like you're sinking, just start thanking. Soulfully Yours is a reminder to be true to you, be true to the desire that is placed in your heart. It is there for a reason. be true to the dream that is within you. And every morning when you wake up, ensure that your dreams wake up with you. As my grandfather would have said, every day, if you can just do one thing, at least one thing a day to get closer to any goal that you would have set, ensure that you do it. Commit yourself to that. And I want to ensure that if anything that I leave with you, what is most important would be how you perceive yourself, the words you speak into your life, the words you speak into the lives of others. And again, we come back to when you serve others, you never realize it, but you serve yourself so much more. Everything you speak is like a boomerang. Everything you do is like a boomerang. So regardless of what someone thinks of you, what someone says to you, what someone does to you, speak life and ensure that like energy, it's all waves that return. It all returns to you. No one ever does anything to you. They do it only unto themselves. You don't, in reality, do something for someone. You do it for yourself, really, because in understanding, it's like a wave and it all returns. When we really take hold of that and we grasp that, we understand that you want to put out more goodness. You want to share more light because it all comes back and it develops and it grows and it only gets bigger and greater. So keep going, keep rowing, as they would say in the song, row, row, row your boat merrily down the stream.
Gently down the
keep
stream.
rowing, keep moving.
So you put a premium on when you speak, or if you think thoughts that you try as much as possible to use the right words in the right context, and not to just use words not to fly off the handle, as some people say, and then have to apologize and so on.
I was doing it unconsciously before, but my husband made me aware of it. There's a poem I did just before we got married. I was 19. We got married at 20. And the poem that I wrote about a decade later, he said, Michelle, do you realize that when you write, look, everything you've written here, it has come to pass. And when he made me wiser to that, then I started to look in my old diaries. And I was happy I kept it because I realized everything that was written came to be. And there's something magical when you write. It's like a contract between yourself and creator. There's something valuable in that. Write it. And you will write it. You will make it right for your life. Write it.
Yeah, so how did you work through being assessed as being dyslexic?
It was something that the teachers would have noticed in terms of my B's were D's, my D's were B's, and everything was more or less upside down. And I had to do a lot of work as a child. I remember my grandparents and parents were very much on me in terms of coaching me in the morning. I had a lessons teacher that I would go to. There was also a special remedial teacher that I went to, and it was consistent. Everything was getting that just poured into me. It became my life. As I woke up in the morning, I had my great aunt who would coach me with my spelling, who would coach me with my writing. Then I would go to school, and from school I would have a lessons teacher. And then again, my great aunt and my grandmother would coach me and give me different exercises. So it became a part of my life. And it was my lessons teacher. I would never forget her name, Suyen. And Suyen was very insistent on me entering this competition that was in the newspaper. I don't remember what publication it was, but at that time, it was asking children to write about their home and what lessons they would have gotten. My parents separated when I was 6, and I think even at 6, I was always an optimist, because one would say that that was a broken home, but I saw it as a value. I now had 3 homes, and in that piece that I won the competition with, I wrote about my 3 homes and the lessons that I learned from each home and how valuable it was for me. And I was just 8 at that time. And I didn't want to write at first, but that was the start of so many beautiful things that followed after. I kept writing, and pen and paper have always been my very best of friends.
Well, next to you.
Yes.
All right, at your side. So what's next, if I can ask that?
What's next? Well, in just a few months, I have another children's book coming along. I've also recently opened a publishing company with Auntie Penny Penelope Spencer. That's Virego Global Publishing LLC. And we've published some books for other authors so far that we're very pleased with. We also published one of the youngest authors, a 7-year-old girl by the name of Nyla Baines.
Wow.
And I'm excited about that. We have another young publisher who's just 5 years of age and wrote 12 stories. So we're excited about that as well. We don't only get very high and excited about projects we do, but the projects that we get to do with others as well. And we have a recipe book that we're doing for a Blue Ribbon chef from Trinidad and Tobago who's based in Florida. So that is coming up and we are elated about that project.
All right, so Saturday at Cafe Blue, 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yes. It's from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. It's an immersive experience because it's not just poetry being read live. It's a full artistic compilation with many entertainers as well. And it's going to be a fantastic evening that would just ensure it hits you to your very core.
All right, Michelle Burrell, thank you very much. Good going.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. I hope you can make it on Saturday.
well, actually, I wouldn't be around. I'm going on a week. I'm taking a break
nice
out
weekends.
of the
Enjoy
country.
it. And thank you so much. This has been a pleasure.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, well, let's continue our trip around the region. Now, we go to Barbados, where there's some stuff happening there. The Parliament decided to extend the state of emergency that was put in place as part of the pandemic response. This was done even as other measures were being relaxed. We get this report from Barbados today.
Parliament today approved an extension to the state of emergency as the island tackles a new wave of COVID-19 cases. Health and Wellness Minister Ian Gooding-Edgell, who piloted the resolution on the Emergency Management Act, said the state of emergency will remain in effect until September 22.
Even though we continue to relax measures and we continue to manage this pandemic, I want to give the House the assurance that this resolution that is before us, which will extend the state of emergency until September the 22nd, is something that we have to do. We have to do it because we are uncertain what will happen out there. We don't know tomorrow if there'll be a more significant strain out there that could compromise Barbados and its population. So for that and for that reason, we have to extend the state of emergency until September. We probably have a better feel of what's happening there.
Minister Edgell assured government will remain on top of the situation, even as he urged Barbadians to get vaccinated or boosted and stick to the protocols, including mask wearing. There has been much concern about the government's mask mandate, especially from tourism stakeholders, and Edgell assured his ministry is open to hearing concerns. He updated the House on recent talks with the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association on the matter.
Last week, we had a meeting with the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association that went well. I explained what had happened in respect of the current situation, and I said to them that we should regroup and have continued dialogue, and we've agreed to do so within the next 4 weeks.
Meanwhile, Home Affairs and Information Minister Wilfred Abrams today cleared the air on a new directive which stipulates that people who fail to wear a mask in public could be fined $100. The measure applies to a public building, public place, or while traveling on a public service vehicle or other public transport, whether as a driver, conductor, or passenger. Abrams told Parliament that prior to the amendment, the offence was one for which an individual could be arrested and charged as much as Barbados $50,000.
And to remove the possibility of getting a criminal conviction, although the law has not changed. The law still says that if you do not wear your mask, you're liable on summary conviction to fine of $50,000. It has a proviso that where this occurs, the police can issue you with a notice. We call it a ticket, a notice, saying that you have to pay a fine, a fixed fine, so the leeway is removed. You don't have to worry about $50,000 if you toe this line. You pay a fixed fine of $100 within 14 days, presenting yourself to the clerk of the the clerk of the magistrate's court for the jurisdiction where the offence occurred. You pay the fine of $100 and that is the end of the matter. It does not affect your record. It does not appear on a certificate of character. That is the end of the matter. So I think a lot of the public did not actually understand that there was the possibility or the threat of a $50,000 fine. And what I'm seeing and what we've been hearing is a lot of people believe that all of a sudden last week the government instituted a fine of $100 for people not wearing a mask. This is not an upscale, sir. This is a serious tone down of what obtained prior to last week.
Let's tell you what's in the papers this morning. The Newsday Trinidad and Tobago, this story on the front page, they're saying that this place, the High Silver Reef, was becoming more and more of a dumping ground. Another body was found there, and there are questions being asked about it. There's also a story which says that the Forensic Science Center is at capacity such that bodies have to be piled upon one another. There's no room there at that place. That's what the top stories are in the Newsday this morning. That's the front page. And the back page talks about Karen Pollard's decision to call it a day for West Indies cricket. And in the Newsday Tobago, the top story, the money spent to create what was called a Taste of Buko for what is known in the only part of the world that happens is in Tobago. Easter Tuesday, $300,000. That's Farley Augustine's count. And on the front page, the story about the THA restores infrastructure at Little Tobago. And there will be 6 polling stations for the PNM elections in Tobago this Sunday. And that's just some of what is on the paper. That's the front page, and this is the back page. So that's where you can check these things out on that publication. But this is our broadcast for this morning. We want to thank you very much for watching. We want to tell you also that tomorrow, 2/3 of the program will be dedicated to the life and times of the great Lord Kitchener, being observed 100 years with his 100th birthday being celebrated in different ways now. The guests will include Errol Peru and Relator. So join us for that. But for now, thanks for watching. I'm Andy Johnson. Before I say we go, news at the top of the hour, followed by today's edition of Talking Point with Shah and Small. See you tomorrow.